Southern Idaho is amazing, and in this video I'll show you all of the reasons why. The following footage was shot between 3 separate days on our more than 4,200-mile road trip across 7 states in the northwestern and upper midwestern United States. If you missed day 1 of our trip at the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area, feel free to go check that out first. After making our way from Oregon and Washington all the way to southern Idaho, we were pretty amped up for our first full day of adventures. We'd begin in the city of Twin Falls, a very dry landscape blessed by the magnificent Snake River and other waterways that flow year-round thanks to an aquifer that covers a significant portion of southern Idaho. For roughly 40 miles along Snake River's canyon walls, one waterfall after another shoots out of solid rock cliffs. It almost seems impossible to see waterfalls gushing out of the side of a canyon and sporadic lush greenery right in the middle of a desert. But here in South Idaho, there are a number of spots that demonstrate the rare scenery which I'll be showing you today. First up, we'd be heading to Shoshone Falls, nicknamed the Niagara of the West. At 212 foot tall, the falls are in fact higher than Niagara Falls. Combine that with an impressive 900 foot wide, and Shoshone Falls is actually one of the largest natural waterfalls in the entire country. Now, unlike the spring-fed waterfalls we visit later, this one sits on the Snake River, meaning it is somewhat seasonal. I've heard that the best times of year to visit Shoshone Falls are during the spring and early summer months, the latter of which is when we'd be visiting. In the fall, irrigation diversion of Snake River flows can significantly diminish water of the falls. This is caused by a small dam you can see directly behind the waterfall, whose purpose is to regulate water flows for consistency of power generation. Looking back at my footage here, Shoshone Falls looks considerably smaller on video than in real life. As someone who has seen Niagara Falls, I used to question the statement that Shoshone Falls is taller than Niagara Falls before visiting and seeing it for myself. But standing on those observation platforms in person makes the waterfall appear ginormous. So ginormous and so fascinating in the dry Snake River Canyon that it's probably one of my new favorite waterfalls I have ever seen. Seriously, it's that impressive. But it's not the only waterfall in the area worth seeing. The best example of a spring-fed waterfall sits right by the city's most iconic structure, the Perrine Memorial Bridge. This alone deserves to be highlighted, so let's slow down and talk about it. The Perrine Memorial Bridge rises 486 foot above the Snake River, making it the 8th highest bridge in the United States. Its truss arch span is eerily reminiscent to West Virginia's New River Gorge Bridge. If you watch my video from New River Gorge National Park, you'll see that my family and I got to participate in something called Bridge Walk, an experience where you get to walk 25 foot beneath the bridge on a super skinny catwalk. Even though Perrine Memorial Bridge is only half the height, walking across it on a sidewalk still freaked me the hell out. So for those of you with the fear of heights, if you're only interested in viewing the bridge, the best place to do so will be at the Twin Falls Visitor Center, which coincidentally shares the same parking lot with a pair of Tesla superchargers. Since we had rented a Tesla Model 3 for this trip, this is something we really appreciated. So thanks Elon, definitely the best location for a supercharger on the trip. Anyways, to get back on track, a few minutes down the road is an amazing spring-fed waterfall that flows year-round and goes by the name of Perrine Coulee Falls. It's the most prevalent of the dozens of waterfalls flowing off the canyon walls into the Snake River, as it has a short hiking trail and road pull-off that visitors can use to access the base. The waterfall is said to stand nearly 200 feet tall, and it's one of South Idaho's biggest gems in our opinion. There's so much to love about this waterfall, from its multicolored basalt backdrop to the fact that said basalt was able to carve out a path around the backside of the waterfall. This totally reminds me of one of the waterfalls you'd see in the Columbia River Gorge, which is famous for its huge falls that visitors can walk behind. So definitely, Perrine Coulee Falls was a major surprise, and I'd highly recommend checking it out alongside the bridge in the much more popular Shoshone Falls. Up next, we drive an hour and a half north to see South Idaho's most mysterious landscape. Craters of the Moon National Monument encompasses 3 major lava fields and preserves some of the best examples of various volcanic features, including lava tubes, cinder cones, and craters. The incredibly fascinating scenery may cause Craters of the Moon to become one of America's next national parks. There has been serious talks about turning the expanse into a national park since the early 20th century, and conversations have only become more frequent in recent memory. If you ask me, it wouldn't be one of the more impressive national parks scenery-wise, but I'm not at all opposed to it since it's such a unique place and because Idaho currently doesn't have one. Well, unless you count the 1% of Yellowstone that's in Idaho. Before I talk about some of my favorite places to visit in Craters of the Moon, let me shout out a nearby hot spring that we only discovered since we were driving by and saw the pool on Google Maps satellite. Out of respect for preserving these springs, I won't give an exact name, but if you are looking to visit a hot spring in South Idaho, hover over the region, type in hot springs to Google Maps, and check out one of the ones that come up. The area's underwater springs and volcanic activity are the cause to these amazing thermal pools, and this one that we visited was among the best hot springs I've ever visited. Honestly, it's right up there with those that we found in Iceland. We had the place all to ourselves, the water was a perfect 90-something degrees Fahrenheit if I had to take a guess, and the color of the spring was gorgeous. It was a perfect see-through blue with plenty of room to swim around. What a gift it was to stumble upon this place. If you find yourself in the area, definitely treat yourself to a hot spring. But it will emphasize that if you choose to visit, don't leave any trash behind. I find that a lot of people who come to hot springs and swimming holes in general try to create a party party scene out of it. I'm not much of a fan of this in of itself because the loud music and loud people are what I'm trying to escape when visiting something like this personally, but it really becomes an issue when drunk people leave their cans and trash behind. So please don't be that person and preserve these spots so others can enjoy it the way that it was originally found. Now on to Craters of the Moon National Monument. There are lots of hiking trails and other attractions to enjoy here, and I think the best way to get a good feel for the place is by trying the North Crater Trail. This is a 3.5 mile out and back trail with 666 feet of elevation gain. Overall, there isn't loads of scenery change throughout the hike, but some of the highlights really emphasize the unique qualities of the landscape. Personally, I thought it was very cool to climb up these tree-covered cinder cones that outlook lava fields. It's something straight out of a sci-fi film. The colors the lava rock are able to portray are also impressive, with shades of reds and oranges found predominantly inside the park's craters. The end of the trail featuring the so-called big craters are quite impressive and leave you scratching your head wondering how these formed. Another part of the trail I really enjoyed was getting to walk across a lava field. I feel that this section of the hike would be so easy to get lost in if it weren't for the markers guiding you. Now, I mentioned that the trail is out and back, so at the very end you're dropped off at a secondary parking lot located next to a few other spots we wanted to see. So what we did is we hiked the North Craters Trail, did these next few things, and then retraced our steps back through the North Craters Trail. One of these stops were these spatter cones, which have these little trails working their way around them. Then from the inside you can actually look down and see the entrance to cave systems formed by lava rock. If you want to actually get inside a lava tube, don't worry, we'll get to that in a second. But first, I also want to add the Inferno Cone Trail. The Inferno Cone is a super satisfying looking cinder cone that you can hike all the way to the top of. It's under half a mile one way with 141 feet of elevation gain, though it's all thrown at you at once, so it's a little rough on the legs. That said, the view from the top is amazing and easily my favorite in the park. I've always said that outlooking flat landscapes from a high viewpoint was surprisingly emphatic, and even though it isn't communicated very well on video, it's something that I really enjoyed. Out in the distance you'll see a few even larger cinder cones, and to the left are the start of the Sawtooth Mountain Range located in central Idaho. The last thing we'd experience in the park are the caves. Now, to enter any of the lava tubes at Craters of the Moon, you will need to ask for a permit at the entrance or the visitor center. They'll basically ask you a few questions like, have you been to any caves recently, and were you wearing the same clothes? And as long as it's a no, you'll be permitted to enter. Now, it's very rare that each of the lava tubes on the caves trail are open here. Usually one or two of them will be closed at a time due to bat rehabilitation efforts. If by chance all three are open during your visit, the trails incorporating them all is 1.8 miles out and back. We got to experience two caves while we were here, first being the Dewdrop Cave. This one was small but felt nice and cool on the inside, which was a neat feature. The second cave was the Indian Tunnel, which was much larger. This had a few open ceiling formations that I thought were awesome, and you could walk through these for quite a while. Between the three things we experienced at Craters of the Moon, this is certainly an intriguing park and a great complement to our day. But there's another National Park Service site in South Idaho that far less people know about. This is one of two national reserves in the country and the only one protecting strictly natural resource. City of Rocks National Reserve sits right on the border between Idaho and Utah and is very close to Nevada as well. It's known for having the California Trail run right on through it. This was an emigrant trail of about 1,600 miles across the western half of the North American continent from the Missouri River towns to what is now the state of California. Immigrants had previously described the rocks here as a city of tall spires, hence where it gets its name. Today, this backcountry byway attracts rock climbers, campers, hikers, hunters, and more. And I must put emphasis on rock climbers. We saw more of those than any of those other categories combined. Yes, that includes hikers, and that's what we were here for. Now, to get to the City of Rocks, it's important that you all come from the east, passing through the town of Almo. The roads entering west are all unmaintained, non-paved dirt roads that I've heard are really rough. From Almo, there's still a short non-paved road that you'll have to take to navigate the park, but this is well maintained and should be passable with any two-wheel drive vehicle. Now, the hike we were going to do here, I'd heard really highlights what the park is all about. On all trails, it's called the South Fork Circle Creek and North Fork Circle Loop Trail. However, maybe we would have been better off downloading an offline map because signage was very poor and we were not able to follow this trail well at all. We did manage to get through the entire South Fork Circle Creek Trail, but then had to retrace our steps because we saw no signage for the North Fork Circle Loop portion of the hike. Nevertheless, it was still quite pleasant with tons of flora and fauna. Also, the rock formations that this place gets its name from are really cool too. City of Rocks National Reserve reminds me a little bit of the Black Hills in South Dakota, which is a later destination on our road trip. I'd also say it has hints of a drier, rockier park like Joshua Tree or Pinnacles in California. The highlight of the trail for me were the arch formations here. I don't believe the one we saw on our hike had a name, but it was super cool looking since the left side was being held up by almost nothing. The arches are another reason I draw comparisons to other desert parks. An easier to access arch is the Window Arch, another very cool formation accessed by a short trail that starts just off of the campground. This one was more interactive as you could climb inside and even walk on top of it. So definitely, as expected, the rock formations were the biggest draw for me, and the shapes and sizes of them were quite awesome. The last thing I want to talk about that we got to experience in South Idaho is Mesa Falls. This was a quick stop only slightly out of the way to get to West Yellowstone. Spoiler alert for our next video, I can't wait to share Yellowstone with you guys. Now, Mesa Falls is probably one of the more well-known waterfalls in Idaho. It can be found in the Caribou-Targhee National Forest, which is part of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. This means that there are some cool opportunities to spot some wildlife. I know we spotted some deer and elk on the way in, but also got to see a marmot chilling by the waterfall as well. Mesa Falls has an upper and lower tier, and each are accessed by their own parking lots. If there is a downside, you can't really get close to the lower falls like you can the upper falls, but you do get this outstanding view looking out over the landscape. I think what I was most taken back by was how drastically different the landscape was here compared to the drier parts of the rest of South Idaho. Since there wasn't that much to see at the lower falls, we decided to make our way to Upper Mesa Falls, which I'd heard was the reason to visit. Contrary to the lower falls, this one had a nice up-close view, and the trail taking you there was wonderful. You start by getting an incredible view of Henry's Fork, probably one of the most beautiful rivers I'd seen in a while. Then Upper Mesa Falls reveals itself at 114 foot tall, 200 foot wide, and when we visited, a rainbow was positioned in such a way that perfectly complemented the waterfall. In my opinion, you'd be wrong to skip Mesa Falls if you're already heading to West Yellowstone. It's not too far, and it's one of the more impressive waterfalls in the state. But with that being said, I'd now like to wrap up my video talking about all of the amazing places we got to visit in South Idaho. What a diverse state this is, with the mostly dry and volcanic landscapes in the south, with lush forestry a bit more east, and even more lush forestry in northern Idaho, as I got to see during our road trip to Glacier National Park in 2021. Then of course you got the Sawtooth Mountain Range in the middle of the state, which is mind-blowing to even think about. In the future, I can't wait to explore more of Idaho. It's absolutely one of the biggest underdogs in the country for natural beauty, and I'd highly recommend a visit. If you enjoyed today's video, feel free to leave me a like and subscribe to Travel Dash for more content in the future. Until next time, I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.